I've lived in the same house for 42 years. Long enough to know which step on the staircase creaks, which kitchen tile stays cold even in July, and which cupboard door swings open unless you wedge a coaster under it. Marie used to call them the house's little temperaments, the way some people talk about pets or children. After she passed, those temperaments became the closest thing I had to company. On the morning everything began, I was sitting at the kitchen table in my old flannel robe, peeling a clementine over yesterday's newspaper. The radio buzzed on the counter, a 1997 Panasonic with a bent antenna, playing smooth jazz with more static than saxophone. I'd already finished my usual breakfast. 1 fried egg, half an avocado, and toast made from the loaf I bake every Sunday. A man needs routines at my age. They keep the mind from wandering into empty places. At 9:04 a.m., I heard tires crunch on the driveway gravel and the slam of a car door I didn't recognize. My son, Andrew, had a way of arriving like a gust of expensive wind. Never quietly, never gracefully, never without the faint smell of cologne that cost more than my weekly groceries. He let himself in, as always. "Dad," he called, his voice echoing through the hallway, bouncing off the walls decorated with photographs of better years. "Where are you?" "In the kitchen," I answered, wiping my fingers on a napkin. He appeared in the doorway a moment later, dressed in a steel-gray suit tailored so sharply it could have cut bread. His hair was swept back with the precision of a man who checked his reflection more often than the weather. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Marie and I spent on our honeymoon. "Morning," he said briskly, as if greeting a client. "How are you feeling today?" I've grown old carefully. I know the signs. Whenever someone asks, "How are you feeling?" before good morning, it means they want something. "Fine," I said. "You?" "Busy," he replied, glancing at his watch, a sleek silver thing that blinked digital messages I couldn't read from across the room. "There's something we need to talk about." There was the prelude to a pitch. "Sit," I said, gesturing toward the other chair. He didn't. He stayed standing, shifting his weight like a salesman preparing his best angle. "Dad," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about your situation." "My situation?" He looked at the wall instead of at me. "Your age. The house. You being alone here. The fact that you fell last month." I tripped over a sock, I said. "That's not exactly a call for hospice." He ignored the joke. Andrew never did have much patience for humor that wasn't his. "I found a place for you," he continued. "A really good place. Clean. Comfortable. Safe." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a glossy brochure, sliding it onto the table like he was presenting a business acquisition. On the cover was a building with beige siding, overly cheerful windows, and hedges trimmed into forced roundness. Across the front, Oak Ridge Living Complex, independent senior suites for a peaceful tomorrow. I peeled the brochure open. Inside were pictures of spotless hallways, communal dining rooms decorated with plastic fruit, and smiling elderly people who looked like stock photos of before in a retirement plan commercial. "You want me to move here?" I asked. He sat then, leaning forward, elbows on the table. "Not want. Recommend. Strongly." I studied him for a moment. His eyes darted around the room, landing on the leaking faucet, the faded paint, the stack of mail near the toaster. Then they moved to me, my thinning hair, the liver spots on my hands, the softness settling around my jawline. "You'll be comfortable," he said. "They take care of everything. Laundry, meals, medical checks. You won't have to worry about anything ever again." "I don't worry about anything now," I said. He ignored that too. "They have a memory care wing," he went on. "In case, later." Memory care. The words landed heavily. Marie used to fear it, losing herself piece by piece the way her mother had. I never imagined my own son would brandish it like a selling point. "How much does it cost?" I asked. He hesitated, a fraction of a second, but I saw it. "Not much," he said too quickly. "Just a monthly fee. $5,200. I set the brochure down. $5,200, I repeated. "It covers everything," he insisted. "It's a great deal." "For whom?" He bristled. "Dad, don't be stubborn. You can't keep living here alone. It's not safe. The house needs repairs you can't handle. The yard is too much. And honestly, It's time to think practically. Ah, there it was. The real reason. Practicality. I'd heard that word before, from Andrew specifically. He'd used it when he convinced me to put him as an authorized user on my bank account for emergencies. When he pushed me to sign a couple of papers to simplify taxes. When he suggested we refinance the house, just in case. Always practical. Always helpful. Always in his favor. I'm not moving, I said simply. He exhaled sharply, as if I'd just told him I'd burn down a building. Dad, don't do this. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Harder for whom? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he shifted to sympathy, the artificial kind he used at work. I'm worried about you, he said softly. I don't want to get a call one morning that you slipped in the bathroom or... Andrew, I interrupted. I've fallen once in 72 years. Dad. And I got up. He leaned back, expression shifting from concerned son to frustrated investor. I knew that look. Marie had seen it once and told me privately she didn't trust it. Look, he said finally, Oak Ridge has a room available next month, but they need to know soon. I already spoke to them. You already spoke to them? I repeated. He recoiled slightly, realizing too late what he'd revealed. For information, he said. Just information. And did this information involve my finances? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence filled the room like smoke. I closed the brochure. Andrew, I said, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not moving into a retirement home. Not now. Not ever. He stiffened, jaw tightening. So that's it? You're just going to stay here until something happens. I nodded. Seems like a fine plan. He stood abruptly, gathering his briefcase. You're being unreasonable, and you're being something else entirely. He paused at the doorway. Think about it, Dad. Really think about it. You can't stay here forever. When he left, the house seemed to inhale. The walls expanded. The air shifted back into place. I sat there alone for a long time, the brochure still on the table, its glossy pages glinting under the morning sun. Comfortable there. That's what he said. Comfortable. I didn't know yet what Andrew was planning. I didn't know about the debts. I didn't know about the second mortgage. I didn't know how deep his selfishness ran. But I knew one thing. He wasn't trying to protect me. He was trying to position me. And I had a feeling I was about to find out exactly why. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from fear. Age has whittled fear down to a dull pebble in my pocket, but from the way Andrew's words lingered in the house long after he'd driven off. Think about it. Comfortable there. Can't stay here forever. He said them like commands disguised as concern. By morning, I felt something shifting in my chest. Not quite anger, not quite suspicion, but the first painful tug of recognition. The kind you get when you finally look at something straight on instead of from the corner of your eye. So I made coffee black and strong and started doing what Marie always did when something felt wrong. I checked the numbers. It began innocently. I logged into my bank account to pay the utility bill, as I always did on the 9th of the month. The house was quiet, still cold from the night. My slippers made soft scraping sounds against the linoleum as I moved from the kitchen to the living room. My laptop, old and slow, needed almost a full minute to wake up. The key stuck a little, the O especially since I once spilled broth on it while making soup. But eventually, the browser opened and the banking site too. I typed in my password, then the two-factor code, then waited. When the screen loaded, I sat very still. The checking account balance looked light, lighter than it should have been. For years, I've kept a comfortable cushion, around $25,000, give or take. Enough for emergencies, repairs, one or two spontaneous indulgences like an expensive bottle of bourbon on Marie's birthday. But now the number on the screen was $11,682.73. Half. Gone. I scrolled through the transactions. $6,000. Oak Ridge Living Complex Reservation Deposit. Date. Last week. I blinked. Read it again. Read a third time. A deposit. Using my account. My jaw tightened so sharply I felt a small pulse throb at my temple. I clicked deeper into the details, and the line beneath the payment nearly made me drop the mouse. Authorized by Andrew Hale, joint account holder. Joint account? No. We made him an authorized user years ago, but joint? Joint implied equal ownership, equal access, equal rights. Marie and I had agreed never to do that. I could almost hear her voice, calm, certain, access for emergencies, not ownership. Something was very wrong. I felt heat rising in my chest, that slow building, metallic kind that happens when your body realizes it has been fooled long before your mind admits it. I clicked again. Another withdrawal. Then another. $1,980. Emirates Airlines, Dubai. $12,450. Emirates Business Class. $4,200. MindVenture Coaching Office Lease. $19,700. Tesla Model Y down payment. $246. Online coaching certification. Every line was a story I hadn't been told. Every number was a sentence written in Andrew's handwriting. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly through my nose the way Marie used to when she was trying not to raise her voice. A second mortgage, a luxury car, a business trip to Dubai, some kind of coaching office, and a reservation deposit for my place in a retirement home. Not coincidence, not care, not concern, a strategy. I opened a different tab, my mortgage account. The one Andrew helped me manage because I didn't need to worry about tedious paperwork. My hands trembled as the page loaded. Mortgage balance, $178,400. Loan type, home equity refinance. Date, 18 months ago. My heart dropped. I never refinanced. I never would have allowed it. The house was nearly paid off. It was meant to be my safety net. And now someone had tied that safety net into a noose. I clicked on the document. The digital copy of the refinance agreement appeared on the screen, but the signature at the bottom wasn't mine. It looked like mine, enough to fool a quick glance. But I've signed my name thousands of times, and I know exactly how my H leans. This one leaned wrong. My son, my flesh and blood. Forging my name. My mouth went dry. I stood and walked to the kitchen, pacing slowly from the stove to the sink, then back again. The house seemed smaller suddenly, as if the walls were moving inward, try to whisper something I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was premeditated. Andrew didn't want me comfortable. He wanted me contained. He wanted me tucked away in a senior suite, so he could take full control of the house, sell it, and pay off his mountain of self-inflicted debts. The debate trip, the business class flight, the overpriced lease for some nonsense startup he probably thought would make him a millionaire. All funded by me, silently, without consent, without shame. I went back to the laptop, opened the next page, and the next, and the next. Emails between Andrew and his business partner. Projected earnings. His personal contributions listed as secured by family property. Documents I'd supposedly signed. Plans to sell the house within 3 to 5 months once Dad is settled. Settled. A neat word for out of the way. At one point, I realized my hand had curled into a fist on the edge of the table, so tightly my nails left small half-moons in my palm. I unclenched it, not with calm, with decision. I looked around my kitchen. The old cabinets. The chipped blue mug Marie always used for morning tea. The sticky note with her handwriting still pinned to the fridge. Buy lemons. Love you. This wasn't just a house. This was the life we built. And my son had carved it up like a butcher with a dull knife. Something in me hardened then, a quiet, steady kind of hardness, like metal cooling into shape. If he wanted me out of my home, if he wanted to tuck me away in that beige retirement complex like an inconvenient file, if he wanted to use my home as collateral for his fantasies of grandeur, then he was about to learn a lesson he should have learned 20 years ago. Never underestimate an old man who has nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. The next step was clear. I closed the laptop, put on my coat, and drove straight toward Oak Ridge Living Complex. Not to move in, but to see exactly what Andrew had planned for me, and maybe to start planning something of my own. I drove to Oak Ridge Living Complex on a Thursday morning. The sky was the color of watered-down milk, the kind Marie used to pour in her tea, always muttering that it ruined the flavor but preserved the dignity. I didn't quite know why I was going, only that I needed to see the place with my own eyes. to see where my son intended to bury me alive. The entrance to Oak Ridge looked like someone tried to recreate a luxury hotel using a mid-2000s contractor and a prayer. The sign out front had gold lettering that flaked at the corners, and the landscaping was so aggressively symmetrical it made the hedges look like pieces from a board game. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something sterile, a hospital wrapped in a polite lie. A fake fireplace hummed against the wall, flickering with artificial flames that reflected off polished floors. Elderly residents moved down the hallway in slow, resigned clusters, like boats drifting with the current. A receptionist in a burgundy blazer looked up from her computer. "Welcome to Oak Ridge. How can we help you today?" She chirped with the energy of someone who'd been trained to sound cheerful 6 times an hour. "I'm here to look at a room," I said. "My son suggested it." "Oh, wonderful," she replied, tapping quickly at her keyboard. "Name?" "Hale," I said. "James Hale." Her fingers stilled. "Oh," she said, tone shifting. "Yes, of course. We were expecting you." That sentence sat wrong with me. Expecting me? I hadn't made an appointment. Before I could respond, she added, "And thank you so much for the deposit." I felt the words in my bones. "The what?" I asked. She frowned delicately, as if she thought I might simply have forgotten. "The $6,000 deposit your son submitted last week. From a joint account." Joint account? There it was again. That lie wearing my name. I forced my voice to stay level. "I see. Let me bring our general manager," she said. "He'll be delighted to walk you through your future home." Future home? Not if I burn the place down. She walked off with the purposeful stride of someone who believed she was doing me a favor. While she fetched the manager, I looked around. 2 old men sat at a card table, flipping through a pack of worn-out cards, their faces slack with boredom. Across from them, a woman with bright white hair was knitting, her needles clicking like a metronome. A TV played some daytime show about home makeovers. The volume was too loud, and the captions lagged by 2 full sentences. No one seemed to notice. This wasn't a retirement home. This was a holding pattern. A waiting room for lives slowly evaporating. A door behind me opened, and a tall man with thinning sandy hair approached. His name tag read, Kyle, General Manager. "Mr. Hale," he said, shaking my hand with the enthusiasm of a man who needed a commission. "Wonderful to meet you. Your son has spoken very highly of our partnership." "Has he now?" "Oh yes," Kyle beamed. "He said you're eager to transition, that you're looking for something comfortable, stable, and structured. And of course, we at Oak Ridge pride ourselves on giving our seniors the dignity they deserve at this stage of life." I almost laughed. This stage of life. As if I were already half planted in the ground. "Come," he said, gesturing to the hallway. "Let me show you your suite." We walked down a corridor lined with framed watercolor paintings, flowers and soft pastels, painted by someone who, based on the shaky brushstrokes, might have been nearly blind. Room 214. Kyle opened the door. Inside was a tidy little box of a room. 1 bed with a thin mattress, a small wooden dresser, a beige recliner that smelled faintly of disinfectant, and a kitchenette so small I could touch both walls without straightening my arms. "This is one of our premium suites," Kyle said proudly. It was, if the year were 1958. I stepped to the window. The view was of a parking lot. A cracked one. Kyle continued his pitch, words sliding past me like oil on water. "Weekly cleaning, medication management, meal service 3 times a day, though we do encourage residents to maintain independence whenever possible. And of course, family visits are welcomed, encouraged even. Your son mentioned he'd stop by Sundays." My jaw tightened. Andrew hadn't visited me on a Sunday in 9 months. I turned from the window. "What exactly did my son tell you?" Kyle hesitated, then decided honesty wouldn't cost him anything. "Well, he mentioned your declining mobility, your fall." "I tripped on a sock," I said. "That's not a medical condition." "He also said you're becoming forgetful." "Forgetful?" "The same man who couldn't remember my birthday, claiming I was slipping." And Kyle continued, lowering his voice, "He did express concerns about your ability to manage your finances." Ah, there it was. The beating heart of the plan. "Did he?" I said quietly. Kyle nodded sympathetically. We understand these things can be difficult. Adult children often don't know how to begin these conversations, but we support them however we can. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I kept my voice level. Tell me, I said, what happens to a resident's house once they move in? Well, he said with rehearsed neutrality, that's up to the family. Many choose to sell the property to finance long-term care. Of course they do. Andrew already had the listing drafted. He drafted the sale contract too, I would later discover. I walked deeper into the room, running my fingers along the edge of the kitchenette counter. Plastic laminate. Cheap. Cold. I sat in the recliner, slowly, letting its stiff fabric press into my back. For the first time, I could see Andrew's full plan laid out like a blueprint. Move me here. Sell the house. Patch the holes in his business schemes. Pay off his debts. Start fresh. And leave me here, aging behind beige walls until the only choices I had left were soup or mashed potatoes for dinner. I stood. I'd like to see the financial paperwork, I said. Of course, Kyle said brightly. I'll print it out. He left the room. I remained standing in the doorway, staring at the hallway I was meant to call home. I felt something then, something I hadn't felt in years. A very old, very cold clarity, because across from my room, taped to the wall, was a notice. Notice of property sale, Oak Ridge Living Complex. Building to be transferred to new ownership pending bank approval. And in that moment, I understood everything. The building was about to be sold. Andrew had already sunk money into his business office here. Soon, someone else would own the place. And Andrew needed me in it before that happened. So he could negotiate from a position of leverage. So he could sell my house. So he could stabilize his collapsing financial castle. But as I stood there, looking at that sign, a different thought settled into my mind like a coin dropping into a jar. If Oak Ridge was for sale, why couldn't I buy it? Why shouldn't I? I pictured the look on Andrew's face. Shock, rage, confusion. A son realizing he'd underestimated the father he thought he could neatly dispose of. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I smiled. Not a big smile. Not a triumphant one. Just a small, private one. The kind Marie used to call my thinking smile. Kyle returned with a stack of forms. Ready to review the costs? Oh yes, I said. Very ready. Because if Andrew thought Oak Ridge would be my cage, he was about to learn what happens when you push an old man to the edge. He doesn't fall. He steps forward. And he takes the whole damn building with him. I didn't go home after leaving Oak Ridge. Not right away. Instead, I sat in my car for a long while, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the rows of identical beige units that stretched out like unremarkable Lego blocks. The engine clicked softly as it cooled. A breeze brushed dust across the hood. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Anger is sharp, noisy, a young man's weapon. No, the feeling settling into my chest was quieter, heavier, older. The feeling a man gets when he sees the world clearly, without illusion, and recognizes that the people meant to protect him are waiting for him to become weak enough to use. And the decision that followed didn't come from rage. It came from arithmetic. If Andrew wanted me in Oak Ridge so badly, if he had bet my home, my future, on the assumption that I was too old, too dull, too soft, then the smartest thing I could do was act exactly in the way he thought I couldn't. Deliberately, strategically, and with absolute control. I put the car in a drive and headed straight downtown. The First State Municipal Bank sat in a squat concrete building left over from the 70s. It had the charm of a tax office and the lighting of an interrogation room, but was where Marie and I had opened our first savings account, and then our CD ladder, and then, quietly, cautiously, our in case things go wrong file. She named it. She always thought ahead, more than Andrew ever did. Inside, the bank smelled of old carpet, printer toner, and the faintest trace of peppermint from a bowl of wrapped candies on the front desk. A young teller with a ponytail and a nose ring glanced up as I entered. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you? I need to speak with a senior account manager, I said. Appointment. No. Is this regarding a personal or business matter? I didn't blink. Both. She hesitated, then nodded and picked up the phone. Within 2 minutes, I was being led to an office in the back where an older man, late 50s, salt and pepper hair, ties slightly crooked, stood to greet me. "Mr. Hale," he said warmly. "Been a long time." I remembered him vaguely. Richard something. He used to help Marie when she came in to renew CDs. "Richard," I said. "Yes, it has. What brings you in?" I sat, opened my coat, pulled out the file I prepared. "I want to make a large purchase," I said. "A building." His eyebrows rose. Not in shock, more in curiosity. Men his age didn't underestimate men my age. "Which building?" "Oak Ridge Living Complex." He blinked once. "That's a substantial asset." "I know, and you're aware it's pending a bank-mediated sale due to a refinancing default by the current ownership?" "Yes. And you know the purchase price starts at $2.6 million, I finished. Richard settled into his chair. "Then you've done your homework." I reached into my folder and slid 2 documents across the table. Our old "in case things go wrong" investment statement and a ledger I'd kept updated long after Marie passed. His eyes widened slightly as he scanned the numbers. "You have over $400,000 in liquid assets," he murmured, "and your remaining portfolio totals." "Enough to make this happen," I said. "With the right structuring." He looked up at me, measuring something. "Why Oak Ridge?" For a moment, I didn't answer. Not because I was uncertain, but because the truth felt almost grotesque when spoken aloud. "My son is trying to put me there," I said, "so he can sell my house. He's leveraged my property for his own debts. He's used my accounts without consent, and he believes I'm too old to do anything about it." Richard didn't gasp. He didn't pity me. He simply nodded once, the nod of a man who had heard every kind of human disappointment that money can produce. "I see," he said. "We talked details. The bank would accept $400,000 down. The rest could be financed through a trust. The very same trust Marie and I had started decades ago for future security. I had never touched it, never needed to. It had grown quietly, steadily, like a tree we planted long ago and forgotten." Richard explained the process. Due diligence, inspection timelines, escrow, debt reassignment. I understood every word. I wasn't always an old man in a flannel robe. I once ran municipal projects worth more than this entire building. People forget that age doesn't erase experience. It distills it. By the time the papers were printed and stacked neatly in front of me, the sun had dipped low enough to tint the windows with amber. Richard placed a pen beside the signature line. "Are you ready, Mr. Hale?" I thought of Andrew's voice at my kitchen table. "You'll be comfortable there. You can't stay here forever. They'll take care of everything." I thought of the forged signature on my mortgage, the Dubai flight, the Tesla, the office lease, the deposit he'd made with my money into a room he hoped would be my cage. Then I signed. One stroke, then another, and another. My name, written in ink, across a decision that would change everything. When the final document was complete, Richard gathered the pages, tapped them into a tidy stack, and extended his hand. "Congratulations," he said. "You are now the pending owner of Oak Ridge Living Complex." I shook his hand. As I walked out of the bank, the air felt sharper, cleaner, cool in a way that made my lungs expand fully for the first time in days. I wasn't moving into Oak Ridge. I wasn't being put away. I wasn't the old man in the corner waiting for the world to forget him. I was buying the entire building. And the next time Andrew tried to push me into my future home, I'd be waiting for him, not as a resident, as the landlord. Andrew showed up on a Saturday morning without warning. Just the roar of his engine outside, the crunch of gravel under expensive tires, and then the familiar, entitled thud-thud-thud of his fist on my front door. 3 knocks, sharp, impatient. The kind of knock that said, "I own this place," even though, legally speaking, he now owned nothing at all. I didn't open right away. I finished buttering my toast, rye bread, lightly browned, and set the knife down on the plate, just the way Marie used to, handle pointed toward the sink, blade angled safely away. Old habits of a woman who believed order was a kind of quiet dignity. When I opened the door, Andrew stood there with a folder tucked under his arm, his expression strained into something between annoyance and urgency. He wore another tailored suit, navy this time, and a watch that gleamed too brightly under the morning sun. "Dad," he said, not bothering with hello, "we need to talk. Now." I stepped aside, but didn't invite him in. He walked past me anyway. He always did. One day, I thought, he'll realize he can't walk through every door in life just because he wants to. But not today. He marched straight into the living room, where the morning light streamed through half-open blinds and dust motes danced lazily in the pale sun. He placed a folder on the coffee table with a self-important flourish. "Sit," he ordered. I didn't. Instead, I leaned against the doorway, taking my time, watching him shuffle papers like a lawyer prepping a case. "We need signatures," he said briskly, "before the window closes." "Signatures for what?" "For the sale," he said, exasperated. "Of the house. We've talked about this." "We did," I said. And I said no. He exhaled through his nose, short, sharp, indignant. "This is ridiculous, Dad. You can't handle this place anymore. The maintenance, the stairs, the yard. I mow the yard myself." "Badly," he snapped. "And you shouldn't be doing it at your age. Oak Ridge is waiting. We need to finalize the transition." "Transition," I repeated, like I'm a corporate asset. "Don't be dramatic," he shot back. He opened the folder. Inside were documents, contracts, realtor listings, pricing sheets, a prearranged offer from a buyer I'd never met. "You already listed the house?" I asked, voice quiet. His mouth tightened. "Preliminary listing. Soft interest. It's part of the process." I picked up one of the sheets. 421 Willow Bend Lane. Estimated market value, $580,000. Below that, in smaller print, seller, Andrew Hale, authorized agent. Authorized agent. Words wearing my name without permission. "You forged my signature," I said. He glanced away. "I signed for you." "Same thing. It's not a big deal. It's illegal." He waved a hand. "Only if someone cares." I let that sit. Let him hear it echo against the walls he thought would soon be his. Then I asked, why the rush? He blinked, thrown by the question. "Because the market is good, and your spot at Oak Ridge isn't going to hold itself. Deposits don't stretch forever." He said it with the confidence of a man who believed every lie he'd rehearsed. "So you're worried about losing the deposit?" He shrugged. "Among other things." I nodded slowly. "Tell me, Andrew, how much do you owe?" His face tensed. His jaw twitched. A shadow crossed his expression, a flinch he tried to hide. "What are you talking about?" "Dubai," I said. "The Tesla, the office lease, the certifications, the business, the second mortgage on this house. All tied to you, all bleeding out of my accounts." For the first time in a long while, he didn't have a ready response. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "That's temporary. A setback. A six-figure setback." His eyes flashed, anger first, then insult. "You're being ungrateful," he snapped. "Everything I'm doing is for both of us. By putting me in an institution." "It's not an institution," he shouted. "It's a community. A high-end senior living facility with luxury amenities. You should be grateful I've put in this much effort. Effort you paid for with my money." His face hardened. "You're twisting everything. You're making this impossible." "No," I said. "I'm simply not cooperating." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Dad'll listen. Once you're settled in Oak Ridge, I can sell the house, pay off the outstanding balances, and get the business back on track. This is a win-win." "Not for me." "You'll be comfortable there," he nearly shouted. There was the line again. His favorite line. Comfortable. Contained. Obedient. "Andrew," I said softly, "I've already toured Oak Ridge." His eyebrows shot up. "You did?" "I did." "And?" he asked, tension rising in his voice. "You see I was right? You see it's a good place?" I took my time before answering. "Yes," I said finally. "It is a fine building." He visibly relaxed. "Good. See? I told you. And I'll be very comfortable there." He smiled, triumphant. "Exactly." I let him sit in that victory for 3 seconds. 3 long, perfect seconds. Then I added, "As the owner." He froze. His smile hung on his face like a painting coming off its nail, crooked, confused, on the verge of falling. "The what?" he whispered. "I bought the building," I said, calm as a winter lake. "Oak Ridge is mine." He stared at me blankly, mouth slightly open. The folder slipped from his fingers and hit the carpet with a dull thud. "That's not, Dad, that's not funny." "I'm not joking." No, you can't, you couldn't, you wouldn't." "I would," I said. "I did." His voice cracked. You don't have that kind of money. I do when someone doesn't drain my accounts. Color drained from his face. He stammered. You bought the entire retirement home? Why? Why would you do that? To secure my future, I said. And apparently yours. What does that mean? He demanded. I picked up the folder he'd brought, tapped it lightly into a straight line, and placed it neatly back on the table. It means, I said, you have until the end of the month to move your business out of Oak Ridge's 3rd floor. He blinked hard. My what? Your office lease, I said. It's in the building. In my building. And your rent is overdue. The invoice will arrive Monday. He shook his head violently. No, that's impossible. You can't do this to me. I stood. No, Andrew, I said. You did this to yourself. He sucked in a sharp breath, eyes glistening not with sorrow, but with fury. You're ruining everything, he hissed. Everything I've built. You try to sell my home, I replied. You forge my name. You plan to put me away like a piece of old furniture. Consider this balance. He stepped back as if I'd struck him. Dad, please, he said, voice trembling now, cracking around the edges. I need that office. That business. I'm so close to. You're close to nothing, I said softly. Except consequences. He swallowed hard. What am I supposed to do? He whispered. For once, I said, figure it out without me. He didn't respond, didn't argue, just stood there, blinking, caught between outrage and disbelief. Finally, he grabbed his folder, turned, and walked out, quietly this time, as if afraid the house itself might bite. When the car engine finally faded down the street, the silence that settled over the room felt almost holy. In the kitchen, my tea had gone cold. I reheated it, sat down, took a slow, steady sip. Oak Ridge was mine now. My home was still mine. My life was still mine. And for the first time in years, I felt safe. 2 days passed after Andrew's visit, and the house felt different, lighter, as though it had finally exhaled. I woke earlier than usual, brewed my coffee in the old stovetop percolator Marie bought at a yard sale in '03, and stood at the window, watching the neighborhood stretch into the day. The maple tree by the street had begun dropping yellow leaves that swirled like small golden insects across the lawn. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. Not the stillness of loneliness, not the stillness of waiting, but the stillness of a man who has reclaimed his life. That stillness lasted exactly until 10:17 a.m. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, an unknown local number. I almost ignored it, but I had learned through this whole ordeal that ignoring things is how men end up in cages they never chose. I answered. A woman's voice crackled through the line. Good morning, Mr. Hale. This is Linda, front desk manager from Oak Ridge Living Complex. We're calling regarding the rent invoice for Hale Wellness Enterprises. I nearly choked on my coffee. Hale Wellness Enterprises. Andrew's grand startup. His newest fantasy. His escape hatch from reality. Is there an issue? I asked mildly. Well, she said, clearing her throat. We haven't received payment for the last 2 months. The total outstanding balance is $29,600, including late fees. We attempted to contact the primary lessee, but he's not answering, I presume. A pause. Correct. Of course not. Andrew only answered calls when he wanted something. He didn't pick up when consequences came knocking. Mr. Hale, Linda continued, considering the outstanding amount and your role as property owner, we thought it best to inform you directly. I appreciate that, I said. Send me the full report. I'll handle it. She exhaled, audibly relieved. Thank you, sir. We'll email everything shortly. I hung up. Then I smiled, a slow, quiet smile that spread in my chest like warmth from an old radiator, because I knew exactly what handle it meant. And so it seemed it fate. By 1:00 p.m., I was in my car heading to Oak Ridge. The parking lot was half filled. Resident sedans, staff hatchbacks, a delivery truck idling by the side entrance. And parked crookedly across 2 spaces, in a hurry or in arrogance, was Andrew's silver Tesla. Of course, inside the lobby was buzzing. A group of elderly residents sat watching the commotion near the elevators with the gleeful curiosity of people starved for entertainment. A nurse pushed a medication cart down the hallway with forced professionalism. I could already hear raised voices down the corridor. It didn't surprise me when I reached the elevator and saw Andrew, red-faced, suit rumpled, hair disheveled, arguing with Linda and two other staff members. "You people are out of your minds," he shouted. "I don't know rent. This is a mistake, probably one of your clerical errors. You can't just bill me for." "It's not a clerical error," Linda interrupted, tired but firm. "You signed a lease for 3 offices on the 3rd floor. I didn't. Well, yes, but it wasn't supposed to. Look, this is ridiculous." Someone tapped my shoulder. It was Mrs. Whitmore, the tiny woman with the knitting needles I'd seen on my first visit. "Oh, good," she whispered excitedly. "You're here." "He's been yelling for 10 minutes. It's better than cable." I nodded, glad to provide entertainment. Then I stepped forward. The moment Andrew saw me, something ugly crossed his face. Rage first, then panic, then an emotion too childish to name. "Dad," he barked, "tell them. Tell them I don't owe this. This is insane." I folded my hands behind my back, letting silence hang for a moment. "Andrew," I said, "they're doing their job." "I do not owe rent," he roared, loud enough for heads to turn. One of the residents clapped. Another whispered, "Oh boy, here we go." I spoke softly, soft enough that he had to stop shouting to hear me. "You do owe rent, and you owe it to me." His mouth dropped open. "What?" "The building is mine," I repeated. "Every office, every suite, every hallway, including the one your startup occupies." That's, Dad, for God's sake." His hands trembled. "This can't be legal." "It's entirely legal. You signed a lease. You owe $29,600. He turned to the staff. "This is harassment. It's fraud. My father, he's not well. He's confused. I'm perfectly well," I said. "And you're not talking your way out of this." "Dad, please." His voice cracked. He sounded like a child throwing himself against a locked door. "All you have to do is cancel the invoice," he said. "Just wipe it clean. You can do that. You're the owner." I agreed. He exhaled in relief. "But I won't." The relief curdled into fury. "You're doing this to punish me," he shouted. "To humiliate me." "No," I said. "You handled the humiliation just fine on your own." A few residents snickered. Linda coughed to hide a smile. Andrew stepped closer, lowering his voice but not his anger. "Dad," he hissed, "I need this office. I need this business to succeed. You have no idea how hard I've been trying." "You've been trying hard," I said evenly, "to bury your mistakes under my name." "That's not, I know. You don't understand anything." "I understand enough," I said. "You forged my signature. You tried to sell my home. You schemed to put me away so you could raid the last thing your mother and I built." He went very still. Then I said the line I had waited weeks to say. "You said I'd be comfortable here." I murmured, "And I am. More than you could imagine." Something inside him broke, quietly, invisibly, like glass cracking under a rug. "You're choosing this?" he whispered. "You're choosing them over me?" "No," I said. "I'm choosing myself." He looked at me, not with love or regret, but with the stunned, wounded confusion of a man who has only ever seen relationships as levers. "You're going to regret this," he said finally. "No," I replied. "I already regretted trusting you. This is the first decision I've made in years that feels right." He stared at me for a long moment, eyes shining with humiliation, jaw clenched, breath shallow. Then he turned and stormed out of the lobby, past the curious residents, past the staff, past the front door, into the bright afternoon sunlight. The automatic doors whooshed closed behind him. Silence settled. Then Mrs. Whitmore clapped. "Bravo," she said. "That was better than my soap opera." Someone else added, "You should own all the retirement homes." "That was spectacular." I nodded politely, though my chest felt tight. This was not victory. This was justice in its slowest, most painful form. Linda approached me. "Are you all right, Mr. Hale?" I exhaled. "I am." And, for the first time in a long time, I truly was. The day after the public scene at Oak Ridge, the world felt strangely quiet, as if someone had turned down the volume on everything but my own breathing. I woke before sunrise, made coffee the way Marie liked, 1 teaspoon of sugar, a splash of milk, and sat by the kitchen window watching the first pale light slide across the lawn. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. It didn't feel like a place waiting to be emptied. It felt lived in. Mine. For the first time in a long while, I didn't check my phone for messages from Andrew. And for the first time in a long while, there weren't any. He went silent. No shouting, no threats, no guilt-laced voicemails, no excuses, no crocodile tears about family and trust. Silence from him was something I had fantasized about, but never believed I'd get to experience. And yet, beneath the relief, there was something else, something quieter, something deeper. Grief, not for the son I had, but for the son I had hoped he could become. Marie used to say grief doesn't always howl. Sometimes it just sits with you at breakfast and waits for you to acknowledge it. So I poured it a second cup of coffee and let it stay. Around 10, the mailman came by, an older fellow with a wiry beard and a perpetual grin. He handed me a stack of envelopes, mostly junk, catalogs, insurance offers, an invitation to a hearing aid demonstration. And then something heavier, a thick white envelope. Return address, Hale Wellness Enterprises. I held it a moment before opening it. Part of me, the father part, the foolish part, still wondered if it might be an apology, a confession, a truce, some fragile olive branch. But inside, instead of olive branches, there was a brittle, confused note written in Andrew's sharp handwriting. Dad, I don't know what you expect me to do. I can't pay this rent. My business can't survive without the office. I need you to be reasonable. Call me Andrew. Reasonable. A word he always used when he meant obedient. I read it once, folded it neatly, and set it aside. He needed me to call him. He needed me to fix what he broke. He needed me to continue being the safety net he had been sawing through for years. And for perhaps the first time in my life, I didn't need him at all. I walked into the living room, clicked on the old lamp with its warm yellow shade, and sat in the armchair Marie used during stormy nights. The cushions sagged softly beneath me. Outside, the first leaves of the season fluttered in the wind. I spent the afternoon at Oak Ridge, not as a resident, not as a victim, but as the owner meeting with my newly hired property manager. A steady, no-nonsense woman named Clara who had experience running senior communities and didn't flinch at complicated human messes. She handed me the final ownership packet. Everything's in place, she said. We can begin restructuring right away. You'll see income within 2 months. It will be a strong investment. I'm not doing it for the investment, I said. She raised an eyebrow. No, and I didn't elaborate. Some things don't need explaining. We checked the building together, room by room, hallway by hallway. Residents waved at me, some calling me Mr. H, others boss. One woman simply patting my arm as I walked by, as if I were a reassuring piece of scenery she didn't want to lose. And strangely, I felt a home there. Not trapped, not stored away. Seen. Later, as Clara and I finalized staff adjustments in the lobby, the front doors opened, and Andrew stepped in. He looked nothing like the polished man who had ordered me to sell my home. His hair was uncombed, his tie crooked, his eyes rimmed with fatigue. His suit jacket hung open, wrinkled. A man cracking under pressure he had built for himself. Our eyes met. His widened. Dad. He began, striding toward me. Not here, I said softly. But this is my workplace now, I said. Not our battleground. He froze, caught between the urge to argue and the sudden awareness that he was not the most powerful man in the room. Dad, he said again, quieter, desperate. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. You needed many things, I interrupted. Most of all, you needed to learn what no means. He swallowed hard. I'm your son. Yes, I said, and I loved you enough to raise you. But you grew up believing love was something to exploit. I wasn't trying to exploit you, he whispered. I made mistakes. You made choices. He shook his head, blinking rapidly. If you don't help me, I'll lose everything. You lost everything when you tried to take everything from me. The lobby was silent. Even the elevator chimed softly behind us, as if embarrassed to interrupt. Andrew's voice cracked. So that's it. No, I said. His eyes brightened momentarily. Hope, pitiful and small. I continued. The rent is due on the 1st of every month. No exceptions. You sign a contract. Honor it. And if you can't, move your business somewhere else. His face twisted. Not angry, not surprised, just broken. I can't believe you're doing this, he said. You'd rather ruin my life than help your own son. I shook my head gently. You ruined your own life, I said. I'm simply stepping out of the way. He staggered a step backward, then another. He looked at me one last time, eyes hollow, jaw trembling, and then he turned and walked out through the automatic doors. They closed behind him with a soft hiss. Claire approached. Are you all right? Yes, I said quietly. I am. I went home that evening and made dinner. Pan-seared salmon, garlic mashed potatoes, a small salad with vinaigrette. I set a second plate at the table, the way I used to when Marie was alive, not because I expected company, but because it felt like honoring something gentle inside me. The house was warm, the air calm, no threats on the phone, no guilt pounding on the door, no lies in the mailbox. I took a long, slow breath. Justice had not come with fireworks or shouting or vengeance. It had come quietly, in the form of a key, a signed deed, a locked contract, a man standing up one last time for what was his. Before bed, I wrote my will. Everything, my home, my savings, the Oak Ridge building, would go to a community trust for education and elder support. Not one penny to Andrew. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. When I finished, I closed the document and sat for a long while in the dim kitchen, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirp of crickets outside. And I whispered aloud, not to myself, not to Andrew, but to the quiet, steady world that had finally returned to me. He thought he could put me in that building. Instead, he pays rent to the man he tried to replace.